Hello and welcome to Growing Tech Fast, the condensed podcast in which we discuss all things software startups. Today, I have the great pleasure of being joined by Lars Helgeson, who is the CEO and founder of GreenRope. Lars, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Great to have you. Really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Connor. It's great to be here too.
No worries. Well, look, I guess to kick us off, Lars, the place we always like to start is if you just want to give us a bit of an introduction just to yourself, really, first and foremost. And then secondly, if you can tell us a bit about GreenRope, who you are and what you're doing, that'd be a great starting point.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Lars Helgeson, as we mentioned before. I started the company back in 2000 when I got out of the Air Force. Wanted to, at first, the idea that I had was to come up with a good way to do email marketing. And so this is way back in the day before it really was an industry. And so started it with a business partner, went through a few growing pains, and then around 2008, decided to pivot a little bit more towards the direction of CRM. And what we had found was that a lot of businesses struggle with the actual collection and integration of data. And so when we were finding our clients were using email marketing, they were having a hard time trying to connect the dots with what that actually meant to what the emails and the different methods of communication were actually doing to and for their business. So in looking at that, we realized that we really needed to build a way to pull that information together. And so back in 2008, it was kind of a new idea, and I started working on it. We launched it in 2011 as GreenRope. And the idea for that was, green for revenue and sustainability, rope because many strands make a rope strong. And the idea was we wanted to make this rope with all these different strands. And so email marketing, of course, is part of that, but really at the core is CRM. So understanding the relationships and the different methods that you're maintaining and building and acquiring new relationships. And so what we thought was if we create the CRM first as the core, and then we sort of connect email marketing, which we had known how to do for quite a while, but then think about other things that would impact, like websites, like support ticketing, like event management, knowledge management, all these different things that were connected to the CRM. If we could make it easy for the gathering of that data and the processing of it by the company, then we could really take the complexity out. And that's really what most businesses struggle with, is that you've got these different departments, everyone doing different things, and trying to unify that data together in a meaningful way. And so the concept of an all-in-one now is a lot more accepted. There are a lot more businesses out there that are doing things like this. And the idea is to simplify the process of pulling that data together so the decision makers, the people on the team, can access the information that they need. So it took a while to work through that with all the different kinds of businesses, and how do you build a system that's complex enough to handle the complexities of business, but simple enough so that people can actually use it and enjoy using it and get value out of it. So that's really been and that is the lifelong struggle with all software. Every time you have something that does a lot, you have to make it so that it's simple enough that beginner users know how to use it. It's easy enough to do for, if you're a salesperson and all you want to do is go in and make notes and keep track of the people that you're working on your sales deals with, and your opportunity management. You want that to be simple and fast enough that you can go in and do that. Yet at the same time, you have to be able to support things like sales enablement and the complexities that can go with automation and logic rules and all that. So there's a lot of intricacies and nuances that have to go into building this right. And I'm not going to pretend and say like we did it right the whole time. You have this vision of what you think is going to be useful and helpful and what people are going to like, and then over time you realize, well, actually we probably didn't think about this the right way, and so that's why customer feedback is really important to us. We really listen hard to our customers and try to get a best a feel as we can for how do we serve them best. And so we've always been very focused on providing really good customer service, making sure that we're continually refining and updating the UI and the user experience, not revolutionizing, but finding little ways to make things more efficient. And so as a small business, we never took any funding. And that's one thing that's really, I think, set us apart from a lot of our competitors in the space, is that I still own 100% of the company, and have never taken investor money, no private equity, venture capital, or anything. And so, which is good and bad, less resources to do things with, but also more flexibility in the design of the system and the design of the company and the strategy overall, which has given us a lot more flexibility to be able to pivot with technologies and things like that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the intro, Lars. And yeah, I guess I just want to kind of led me nicely onto what I wanted to cover off next, really, which was, you mentioned that you've never taken any external funding, whether that be from private equity or VCs. A lot of companies out there, it's kind of, I guess, the conventional path is the opposite, right? Is you go out, you seek the VC funding, you scale it or flip it or whatever you want to do, get an acquisition or IPO, but fueled by some external investment. Now, something that we talked about was how you were consciously trying to build GreenRope in a sustainable fashion, and obviously kind of consciously stayed away from seeking external investment. So I just wondered if you could unpack for us a bit more around, I guess, why that was so important to you, and B, the benefits, the benefits that you've also seen from that decision as well.
Yeah, it's always give and take, right? There's a reason why a lot of businesses go out and find that funding, because a lot of people are in it to build the business up and get it as big as possible. And it's a very attractive thing for people to do. My thought was that I wanted to build something that was sustainable. I wanted to build something, and that's one of those things, like I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs that are like, this business is not sustainable without the funding because we're losing money. But as long as we can show growth and the multiple goes up, then at some point I get out before the business either gets reabsorbed by something else, a bigger company that can accept the loss, or just the last investors are holding the bag with nothing. So which I've seen both happen. But I wanted to build something that was more like I said, more sustainable, more focused on the value that we could bring to our customers, more of a traditional type of a business, something that would last a long time, something that would be a legacy for me. So I wanted to create this sustainable model around providing value to customers. And I think, the advantages and disadvantages, there are less resources available to us. But the challenge when you get funding is not that your life is not over and done and everything's great as soon as you get paid. That's when things get really hard, because the investors are looking for their ROI. And oftentimes it's a very large ROI. And so, you have these challenges of, how do I serve as a business leader? How do I serve my employees? How do I serve my customers? And then how do I serve my investors? And when you start to have to serve the investors too, I mean, there's already some conflicts that you'll run into when you're talking about serving customers and employees. I mean, we've always heard the stories of, like, do you always say your employees are always right? Do you always say the customers are always right? And a lot of times it falls in the middle. And as a manager, you have to figure out, okay, when do I side with each? Because at some point you may have a bad employee that's not performing good service or not doing the job the way they should, and the customer is right about them not doing that. And the other side, you're going to have problem customers that are going to be creating hassles and difficulties for your employees, and at some point you sometimes have to fire your customers. So when you throw investors in the mix, things become a little different then, because now they're looking to get their money back. And sometimes you have to make decisions about how much you pay people, what kinds of people you hire. People think about outsourcing, nearsourcing, sending business overseas because it's more efficient to do so at the expense of providing a good customer service experience. And I never wanted to have to worry about that decision of, is it for me to be able to pay back an investor, I'm going to then have to provide less service or less quality or of software or something. What do I sacrifice to be able to give them that ROI back? And so I've never had to make that choice, which I think, like I said, I'm not going to say it's better or worse. It's just a choice that I made for building this business sustainably. And, they're good and bad things, like there are some days, some weeks where I work pretty long hours because, there's, without all those resources behind to back me up, that work has to get done by someone. And so a lot of times that falls back to me. When you say I'm founder CEO, the buck has to stop with you. And so, that's kind of where I end up sort of being a catch-all at the end of the day on some weeks. Other weeks, I don't have to move more smoothly. There's less issues, whatever. And then it's not as stressful, and it turns into a little bit more of a fun lifestyle type of business.
Yeah.
So, as you know, in business, things are different every week. Every day is a different set of challenges. And sometimes you've got fires and people are running around with their hair on fire, and you fix this now. And other days, everything runs smoothly. Other weeks, sometimes months are like everything's been awesome. Like nothing's broken. This is great. So, and it's just the life of the reality of owning a business.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. I think it's good reflection, Lars, on, I think, I guess both the pros and cons, but particularly I think that the tension that can come and the difficulty of managing that three-way relationship between employee, investor, and customer. So that's really interesting. Sometimes goes, I think, under the radar of how difficult a job that is. Again, and the book there stops with the CEO, doesn't it? So to try and navigate those three things and to keep everyone happy and to give ultimate service at the best price with the greatest ROI, is a really, really difficult challenge. So I thought that was a really interesting reflection. But something that I picked up on there, you're talking a lot really about, I think you used the word serve a few times, and it's clear that this conscious decision came from the fact that you wanted to best be able to serve your customers and your employees, and that was the most important thing to you. So I guess when we think about service and I guess servant leadership, why is it that is so important to you? And it sounds like that was one of the most important things for you. So talk to us a bit around that.
That is a good question. And I really take that servant leadership thing to heart. If you ask my employees, they know how hard I work for them, and how much I care about making sure they have a good, positive working environment. But I think it comes down to something that's very deeply, fundamentally part of who I am as a person, and probably why a lot of people get into business for themselves, because they feel that they can do something that is of service to other people in a way that's different or better than they were able to do maybe working at another larger company or a different company. And I think there are definitely people out there that are motivated by money, that are like, I do this because I want to make money. But I think that there are a significant percentage of people that build businesses because they actually care about the mission of what it is they're building. Who are they helping? How are they helping? And I think that when you approach your business with that mindset of I'm here on this planet because I want to do something that's going to make a positive impact. We all think about like, what is our legacy, and what does that really mean in terms of what are we leaving behind? And a lot of people have children. I don't have any children. I have a dog. He's not going to carry my name forth. So my feeling about the purpose of my life is to leave something behind that will be, I can look back and say I was able to help businesses, nonprofits. Like one of our programs is we have a free nonprofit. So if you're a registered nonprofit organization, you can use our platform for free, because I feel that that's a way that I can use what I've done and what I've built, and I should say we, the company, but what we have built to be able to help organizations that can help people more efficiently, to help them reach out and get their message out, whatever it is that they're doing, have an impact. And so I think it all comes back to what kind of impact do we want to leave on the planet? And so I want to look back on my life and know that I did a lot of good things for my employees, for my customers, and that I was still able to find some amount of balance and have an enjoyable life too. So, and I think that if you approach life from a giving perspective like that, a servant type of servant, being servant service is about giving to people. And I think if you approach life that way, that in the end, you're always going to have ups and downs, and there are going to be people that take advantage of you because you have that mindset. But as long as you hold on to that as your base tenet of why are we here, then in the long run, you create something that's valuable for you. And I think ultimately it brings more happiness to you. And that's really, I think, if we can find a balance between work and service and happiness, fundamentally, that's really why we want to be on Earth.
Mm-hmm. I love that, Lars. It's clear then that this the servant leadership thing for you, it's not just a a buzzword or I guess a character you adopt, but it seems to run deep into your like philosophy and outlook on life. I'm sure it sounds like it's obviously very ingrained in everything that you do at GreenRope. So that was really good to hear. And I think something else that I wanted to touch on was something that you mentioned there was the word balance, really. And I think often there is this perception, I guess, if one of the narratives is around the way to go and build a successful startup is you go and get a load of VC money and outside investment, another string to that narrative is that you work like there's no tomorrow, and you compromise and sacrifice maybe at times or all the time your work-life balance to like scale this thing as quickly as you can, and you have all work and no life, I guess. So I guess it sounds like something that you've taken quite seriously, and something that maybe you've been relatively successful at with GreenRope is building a culture around having, good balance and, promoting happiness as well as work and success. So I'm really keen to hear about, I guess, how you've gone about that, how that plays out in reality. If you can talk to me a bit around that, I think it'd be really, really insightful.
It's a challenge. I mean, it requires an adherence to boundaries in your life. And I think it's important to respect that balance with the people around you. So whenever my employees feel like they need to get time off, I never ask questions. I always say, if you want to take a vacation, you need to go, enjoy it, enjoy your time off so that you do have this long-term sustainable balance between your enjoyment, your fun life and your work life. And, obviously we try to make work as fun as possible, but, work is work. So, it's, I think one of the things that I've always had my company remote. We've never had an office. And the advantage to that is that anyone on the team can work anywhere in the world. And so, everyone's got their VPNs and, whatever, and all the software to protect, all that stuff. But the flexibility of someone, and many of our team members are, they'll travel the world and work from wherever in the world they are. And, and it's also, it gives a little more flexibility too. We've got some members of our team who have families, and, some single mothers that need to be able to have some flexibility to be able to take care of their children and, be there for their family too. And so it's having that kind of flexibility, I think, and being able to provide that, it's balance. It's not just about being able to go have just fun, work fun time. I think some of it is like that connecting time that people need with friends and family, and feeling like they can truly be present at those times and not feel drawn back towards, what do I have to do tonight? What do I have to do tomorrow? Just trying to provide enough of an environment so that they can have that kind of flexibility. And so for me, a lot of it's important to provide that environment, because that balance is, it really is, it's what life is about. No, they always say, like, you're not going to be on your deathbed looking back and wishing you had spent more time working. So as much, I think, as you can, as make work fun, and as much as I can create an environment where, obviously the team works very hard, but they know that they can take the time and the space that they need to have that balance. I think that's all. And that wraps back around, from my perspective as a leader, to that servant leadership, to be able to work hard to provide that for them so that they have that flexibility to enjoy their life in a balanced way.
Love that flexibility, boundaries as well. It was a big takeaway of being able to to feel, I guess it's a discipline of having boundaries, but B, being able to build a company environment whereby someone feels that it's okay to respect them as well. So yeah, I was really interested. I guess I just want to stick with culture a bit, Lars, like a slightly different angle, but something that was clear from our discussion was that you've built a culture there where it's kind of okay to be wrong, to have bad ideas. I guess almost like a fearless culture. It's one that I guess probably drives innovation and change. But yeah, I guess it sounds like you've hit on something quite well there. So I'm really interested to hear a bit around, again, maybe how you have driven that culture, but be like, what have been the upshots of that for you and for GreenRope, I guess?
That's a good question. I have a lot of friends that are in different industries, different types of businesses. And I remember myself when I was in the government, like where it's not really okay to come up with your own ideas. And I think that's what drives a lot of entrepreneurs to build their own businesses, is because there are a lot of cultures where you might have an idea and think that you can create something useful, and you're either told your idea is stupid, or you just aren't given the resources to be able to pursue that idea, even though you feel like it's the right thing. And so I encourage my team to come up with those ideas. And we have planning sessions where we sit down and brainstorm things. I always have an open door. If someone says, hey, it'd be really great to do XYZ, let's try it. And oftentimes I'll say, okay, let's try it. My sales team recently came up with this idea. So we have a white labeled version of our platform where you can take GreenRope, and it's called Complete CRM. And you can white label it and sell it to your own channel. And we had a business model previously where there was a lot of money up front and a very low monthly minimum based on that, because we front load a lot of our work to set up this portal for a reseller channel. And the sales team came up and said, well, what if we instead sold it as more of an amortized approach? So rather than a big amount up front, we're gonna trust that someone's gonna come on board, be with us for a long time. Let's spread it out so that there's no upfront, and there's a higher minimum that goes every month. And so it's interesting because they kind of came up with it last month. And usually we sell about 1 a quarter of those, and we've already had now 3 in just the space of a month. And so having those kinds of conversations and someone brainstorming and thinking like, and it's more than just, the simplicity of what I explained to you. There's a lot of expertise behind all of that, to make that work. But in creating that, to allow the open dialogue between the team and sales and marketing, customer service, so that they all kind of are, here's an idea, let's talk about it. How does it work? How do we want to implement? How do we implement it? How do we market it? What's the messaging? All of that kind of together. And then the whole team kind of owns that change, owns that idea, and it becomes part of our culture. It becomes part of who we are, part of our brand. And I think that's an important thing. Having that open door, having that open approach means that we can create an environment where ideas like that can flourish. And they don't always work like that, right? A lot of the ideas, like they kind of fall flat, or or they may not have legs because, for any number of different reasons. So they certainly aren't all as successful as that. That was just something that just recently happened. But I think that by having that culture, that everyone feels like they're actually part of a team, and it's not just words. It's not, because a lot of companies are like, yeah, go team, but the reality is it's the manager at top is just telling everybody what to do.
Yeah.
And I think when you live it, it makes people feel like they're actually contributing. It makes it that, they're making an impact on something that affects everybody else and the customers. And I think that expression of ideas is important for everyone. I don't think, some people are all about, like, they're happy being drones, and they don't want to do anything different. And that's fine for some people.
Yep.
In a small tech company, you really can't afford to have too many of those people on your team. You have to have those idea people, people, not just idea people. You need people that can work hard too. So, it's that balance. But I think the culture ultimately should bring that out of people so that they feel comfortable to be able to share ideas. And and especially if you say, okay, that's a great idea, go work on it and come up with a plan, and then present it, and let's see what happens. And having that flexibility to be able to do that, and the mutual respect for everyone when someone does.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's really important. As you said, not every idea. In fact, most probably are unsuccessful, but it's that repetition of, having that environment whereby it's okay to have bad ideas, or ideas that, bad ideas, but ideas that fall flat or don't work, because out of that you might get 2 or 3 really, really great ones, right? So it's all about building that culture and that environment. And I think, from what I hear from people, Lars, like from the companies who have CEOs or founders or executive leaders who really take this seriously, is where you often see like exceptional innovation, exceptional pivoting during times like even like to bring it up, but COVID, for example, it's those companies usually that have that culture that are, most ready to adapt and to drive innovation and to change. So I think that's really interesting, obviously, to talk about a bit of the upsides that's had for you. And we're coming to the end of time, but like I can't not finish off without asking you a bit around your book, actually, Lars. So you authored authored a book on CRM for dummies. I guess like I'm interested in briefly learning a bit about, I guess, like why, kind of what inspired you to write that, on the one hand, but also like really keen to understand a bit about the story behind it, because I've already had an insight into it and it's a really cool story. So if you can A, share the story, but B, share a bit around, kind of your motivations for writing it. And if there are any folks out there, considering or have that urge to go and write a book, kind of what you would advise them to do.
Yeah, so my biggest challenge in the CRM, especially in this industry, is that everyone thinks of it totally differently. Everyone has different experiences. They've used all different kinds of platforms. Sometimes it's managed from, I guess, more like the like as a hammer, where you've got a sales manager that says you will do this or you will get fired. But I think if you take, again, this sort of the step back and think of it more from a team-based approach and more strategically, you can make the decisions to help you figure out the best way to design and implement a CRM, because it's more than just software, and then pick the right software to support what you're trying to do. So CRM for Dummies is written from the perspective of, if you're trying to figure out how to make this work for a business, how do you take that 30,000 foot view and figure out what you need to know to make the right decisions, to make the team work together and to pull people together, and then find the right tools to accomplish what you're trying to do. And to date, at least at the time I wrote it, there was a lot of technology, or a lot of books and articles written about it, sort of in this very high level, strategic kind of thing. And then there were things that were about specific software platforms, but there wasn't really anything connecting the two. So that's what I was trying to build with CRM for Dummies. And so I would say that if you're writing a book, look for gaps like that, because it's one thing to talk in super esoteric, fluffy language, but translating that into actually what, as a manager, what do you have to know? What are the decisions you have to make, and why do you have to make them? And what are the criteria that you should use? So more specific things that someone can walk away from the book and say, okay, I need to do X. And so that was sort of the initial motivation behind it. So I went out and I thought I was going to self-publish. And when I was looking, I had a friend who had written a For Dummies book. And so it was kind of funny the way the whole thing turned out. Because I approached Wiley, the publisher, and they were very interested in how many followers I had on social media. And I don't have a lot of followers. I've never been this huge influencer guy. You probably have like 100 times as many followers as I do. But I wanted to write this book more, not to draw attention to myself, but to just sort of be a resource for people everywhere, to be able to help them make the right decisions. And so I talked to Wiley, and they said, well, you're not really important enough. You don't have a big enough name for us to have you be an author for a book that's as significant as a CRM for Dummies book, because CRM is such a broad, term. So many people use it. And so they recommended that I go to talk to the technical books division. And so I talked to them, and they said, well, you could write a book about GreenRope. And I said, well, we've got, 20, 30,000 users. That's not a huge enough number. There are companies much larger than we are out there. And so they said, well, yeah, I don't think that we want to necessarily have you write the technical book then. And so I thought, and this is the part where I was like, well, I don't know, maybe if I go back and just say, hey, maybe there's a different approach. So I went back to the original person I talked to that was more on the For Dummies series, and said, so I talked to the technical books division, and they said that it probably wasn't a good fit, but they thought it would be great as a resource for everyone in all the technical books to have this done. And so it didn't, I may have embellished a little bit. but ultimately the woman that I was talking to there said, okay, well, let's put together a case and a document that describes, what you want to build and why, and let's present it. And lo and behold, they took it. And so it was a little bit of, it's a little bit of perseverance, a little bit of how do you craft the message in a way that is more universally acceptable. And so they looked past the fact that I wasn't a celebrity and said, maybe this guy can actually write something that's useful. So, and to date, I think we've sold maybe 40,000 copies or so, which I'm super happy to be able to have provided that information to that many people. Having a publisher like that opens the door to, and had I self-published, I would make more per book, but I wouldn't have had that kind of distribution.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I was hoping to get that book in as many hands of people that work in the CRM space as possible. And that goal was accomplished.
Perfect. Well, a really, really interesting story. And yeah, look, I guess Lars, if anyone out there does want to get a copy, where's the best place for them to go?
You can go to Amazon, Barnes and Noble. But yeah, it's on Amazon right now. There's you can read about it. They've got reviews. They've got the little the excerpts out of the book. So
cool.
So that's a good idea.
Awesome. So that's CRM for Dummies, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Perfect. Okay, cool. Well, look, Lars, coming to the end of time now, but look, I really, really appreciate everything that you've shared with us today. It's been great to be able to get to know you, speaking a bit more about building a company, sustainably, servant leadership, talking a bit around the really amazing culture you've built there, and finishing off with your really cool story about your book. So thank you so much for all the insights that you've shared with us. Thanks for spending your time with me today. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Connor. It's great being here.
No worries. Well, thanks again, Lars, and thank you to our listeners. Until next time, goodbye.